I stuck the guns out the back window and I started shooting.
You had two guns?
Yeah.
One in each hand?
Yeah.
And you were shooting both of the guns?
Yes.
Did anybody else in the car have a gun?
Not to my knowledge. As you can see, in the police report, both of the guns were under my seat.
Yeah. So nobody else shot weapons from that car?
That's why I went to the hearing and then I tried to take responsibility.
I don't think you answered my question. Did anybody else in the car fire weapons out at the victim?
No.
That is interesting. Okay. So why then would you allow 4 other people to go to prison for something that you did? I'm sure you're aware there were 2 guns being shot.
Yes, ma'am.
So who had the other gun?
Mr. Humphrey.
Okay. So you were both shooting out the windows?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, but you're certain that you shot the victim?
Yes, ma'am.
So why is it that no one has ever, I mean, we still have 2 different versions because, according to your co-defendant, he shot both guns.
This hearing or these hearings are really going to be fascinating because we have 2 people who have co-defendants hearings on the same day, and their stories don't exactly add up. We're going to watch both hearings back to back, and then I'll unpack it with all the details at the end. With that, let's jump in.
Oh, like which chair? I mean,
well, I see no one on the right. I think that one lined up for.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Humphrey, we're gonna start, okay?
All right.
All right. Good morning, Mr. Humphrey. My name is Parole Officer Logan. Today is Friday, May 24th, 2024, and this is a Public Act 1584 hearing of the Connecticut Board of Pardons and Paroles. Mr. Humphrey, for the record, the state of Connecticut passed and made effective October 1st, 2015, Public Act 1584, an act concerning lengthy sentences for crimes committed by a child or youth and the sentencing of a child or youth convicted of certain felony offenses. You fall under this act, and basically this means that you are under the age of 18 and that the board shall give great weight to the diminished culpabilities of juveniles as compared to adults, the hallmark features of youth, and any subsequent growth and maturity that you've displayed while we are reviewing you for suitability today. The following board members are present this morning, and by stating their names on the record, certify they have reviewed all statutorily required documents and available pertinent information in preparation of this hearing.
Good morning, sir. I'm Jennifer Zaccanini.
Good morning, Mike Paul.
Good morning. I'm panel member Page.
Also in attendance this morning is a private attorney for Mr. Humphrey. Can you please state your name, juris number, and business address?
Good morning, Naomi Fetterman, assigned counsel for Mr. Humphrey. My juris number is 430-485. My business address is my P.O. Box 96 in North Granby, Connecticut, 06060.
Thank you. Also in attendance is the state's attorney. Please state your name, juris number, and business address.
Are they in them?
Is the state's attorney connected?
They have not yet connected.
Oh. We didn't hear from them. Did you receive an email or anything?
No.
Okay, well, we'll proceed.
No.
Hopefully.
Let the record reflect that there is no one present from the state's attorney's office. All others present this morning in regard to this hearing, please state your name for the record. No one else present, correct? Also present today is victim advocate Vasquez. Mr. Humphrey, please state your name and inmate number for the record.
Joseph Humphrey, 385-639.
This is a public hearing in accordance with Chapter 14, Freedom of Information Act, Connecticut General Statute 1200, which applies to this procedure. Mr. Humphrey, if you have any questions concerning the above, please bring your questions to the attention of the panel at this time.
It does say that he's supposed to attend.
Again, this
I have
is
no
a
question.
hearing. Again, this is a public hearing. Do you have any questions, and are you going to proceed at this time?
I have no questions.
This 1584 hearing is being conducted in consideration of the parole application for Joseph Humphrey, who was serving 40 years, executed suspended after 20 years, followed by 5 years probation for manslaughter first with a firearm. He's also serving 20 years concurrent for conspiracy to commit murder and 5 years concurrent for carrying a pistol without a permit. Total effective sentence is 40 years, executed, suspended after 20 years, followed by 5 years probation. There is victim input in this case. There is an offender accountability plan for the offender. It has been reviewed and shows the offender has completed anger management, alternatives to violence basic and advanced, 7 challenges, auto body and culinary arts program, TREM, young men's group, micro and macroeconomics, tier 2. He's currently participating in aftercare. He works as a janitor, and he has also received his GED. Utilizing the statewide collaborative offender risk evaluation system, the offender's overall score on the RT falls within the moderate range of risk for recidivism. Mr. Humphrey, this is your opportunity to express to the board why you believe you should be granted parole. You may begin.
Good morning. I would like to begin by thanking all of you for this privilege and opportunity to express to you about how programs and self-reflection have impacted the person I am today. I am not the same immature, violent, angry, and impulsive kid I once was. I would like to apologize to the victim's family for my insensitivity on the day of my sentencing. At the time, I was a prideful teenager who was ignorant, fear-strong, weakness, and unable to understand the effects my actions had on your family as well as the community. I speak to you today as a man who's grown, has respect, and not afraid to show my sensitivity and sincerity. I really sincerely apologize for the way I behaved. Over the years, I tried to imagine the pain that you, Ms. Noelzy, felt. No matter how hard I tried, I failed because the pain of a mother losing her child is unimaginable. No parent should outlive their child or be denied to see them grow. What I can imagine will never amount to the pain you actually endured having to live through that tragedy. I truly apologize for the pain I caused. Before I get into my transformation, I believe it is important to describe how I ended up here.
His opening statement goes another 14 minutes, and because this hearing is already so long, I'm going to have to fast forward to it at a high rate. This is not a statement. I'm not saying that I don't want to take it seriously. It's just that it's too long for the total hearing. I'm coming, sweetie. I'll be there soon. If you do want to hear the full hearing, send me an email, and I'll send you the unedited version. With that, let's jump.
Thinking back now, growing up, I lived in a good household. My biological father wasn't around, but my stepfather. For this opportunity to address Justin's mother and tell her how sorry I am for taking Justin's life. In 2014, when I turned 18 years old, I was not in a place where I was prepared to accept responsibility and express remorse. Now, a decade later, I realized the devastating effects of my actions, and I would like Justin's mother to know I am truly sorry. I know I can't change the past, but today I am proud to say I am no longer the problem. I am part of the solution.
Thank you for your statement, Mr. Humphrey. You covered a lot of ground for us. We have questions for you. Before we ask the questions, I want you to know that this panel has reviewed your case extensively. We have records from police report at the time of the offense and court transcripts through your incarceration, everything you've been doing inside, good and bad. In addition, we have a packet that Attorney Fetterman submitted on your behalf. And so we're very well-versed in your case, but we do have some additional questions. When we're done with our questions, we'll turn the hearing over to the Office of Victim Services, and then your attorney, and if the state's attorney joins us, the state's attorney will have the opportunity to speak, okay?
Okay.
And for the record, state's attorney Michael D. Joseph has joined us. Good morning.
Morning.
Mr. Humphrey, I do have some questions for you, and they won't be easy. I'm sure you're aware one of your co-defendants has a hearing today as well. I understand you're still friendly there in the facility.
No, me and my co-defendant ain't in the same facility.
Oh, he moved. Okay, but you are still friends. Have you encountered him throughout your incarceration?
Wait, which one are you?
Mr. Williams.
Oh, nah, only probably for like a month we was in the same facility, but we wasn't
Okay.
in the same side.
Okay. Would it surprise you to hear that the two of you have different versions of the instant offense? What happened?
Yeah, it would surprise me.
Yeah. So the two of you gave different stories. So why don't you tell us what happened the day of the offense? I mean, we don't need every detail. We're not here to retry the case, but I'd like to hear what happened. We know what led up to this, right? There was a feud because one of your friends was shot and killed,
Yeah.
and the victim was friends with, somehow associated with that offense, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so did you and your co-defendants go looking for the victim?
No,
Okay, so tell us how you came upon the victim and what happened.
because it was Hurricane Sandy, and we stayed a night on that side of town,
Mhm.
and it was the hurricane, so the bridges was up. We had to go around. I lived in Stratford, so we was going to Stratford, and on our way to Stratford, we came across them.
You just happened upon the victim. You weren't out driving around looking for
Yeah,
him?
no, I wasn't out looking for them.
Okay. So what happened when I mean, you're driving and what happens?
I seen the dudes and my victim and his friends and my brother was driving down the street, but when he turned the corner, when they seen us, he started running up the street. So we was coming like this way, and he was going that way, and we was turning. I was trying to tell my brother to stop, but he wouldn't stop. So the back window was rolled down. So I just moved my seat back, and I just hung out the back window.
Okay. So he was running away from your car in the opposite direction?
Yeah.
Okay. So, okay, what happened when you put your seat back and rolled down the back window?
I stuck the guns out the back window and I started shooting.
You had two guns,
Yeah.
one in each hand,
Yeah.
and you were shooting both of the guns.
Yes.
Did anybody else in the car have a gun?
Not to my knowledge, as you can see, in the police report, both of the guns were under my seat.
Yeah. So nobody else shot weapons from that car.
That's why I went to the hearing, and then I tried to take responsibility.
I don't think you answered my question. Did anybody else in the car fire weapons out at the victim?
No.
That is interesting. Okay. So why then would you allow 4 other people to go to prison for something that you did? And in fact, 2 of them got the same exact sentence as you, not a day less.
At the time, I was a teenager. I wasn't really worried about nobody else, to be completely honest. But that's why I try to make it right. And I went to the habeas, and one of them got a commutation. I apologize.
His sentence went from 20 years to 16 years. 16 years of his life. And I mean, you did this 11 years later. I just don't understand. Did you all discuss this and everyone agreed, hey, we'll all go to prison for you?
No.
So why didn't any of them give you up?
I can't answer that question, but I tried to make things right. I told whatever they needed me to do, go to court, whatever. I tried.
Right, but that was long after the fact. I mean, their lives were already forever changed. Do you understand the impact that you had on their lives?
Today I understand. Then I didn't understand it. I was angry and I just wasn't ready to hold myself accountable. I just was looking out for myself, to be completely honest. But now, today, I'm trying to make things right. Trying.
And even still, Mr. Williams is going to come in here today and tell us that he shot the victim. It's amazing to me. This blind sense of loyalty, like it's just doesn't make sense. I had some concerns, sir, about your disciplinary reports, and I know it's been 3 years since your last one, but once again, you jump into a fight because a friend of yours was hit. Was this a friend of yours from outside in the community?
It was a friend's younger brother, little brother.
Okay, so you were willing to sacrifice yourself and your freedom to involve yourself in somebody else's fight.
That was it. That was an obstacle that I went through at the moment. Today, I learned from that. I took that as a learning experience. Will I make that same choice? No, I want to make that choice today. I will not make that same choice today.
And you mentioned growing up with your uncles who were basically criminals and bad role models for you. But in 2016, you and your uncle attacked someone who was friends with the victim of the case. Why?
Because I was still young and I still had that mindset that I had to act first before they act on me. Like me and the person that was in that we got into the situation with, I wasn't in that jail for 24 hours and he wasn't in that jail for more than 2 hours. So I had the mindset that I still had that mindset that I had to act first before. But coming to being down after that, being down and running into people from that side of town, like I learned today, like everybody doesn't have that same agenda. Like I got to sit down and talk to different people, know different people, and now I look at things different.
Yeah. Well, and I hope by now you have realized that you have to let people go. You don't owe anybody anything. You owe it to yourself. And sometimes those people that you let go are family members. I'll tell you, I would never, ever put my niece or nephew in a situation where they would harm themselves. So, it's okay to let them go and do your own thing. You have to stop being a follower. You have to be a leader and make your own decisions, and they have to be better ones.
And at this point in my life, that's exactly why I figure like it's okay to be selfish. Like today I'm selfish. Like I'm worried about myself. I'm not worried about nobody else. I'm worried about getting my life together. I'm worried about going down the path I want to go down. I'm not worried about nobody could dictate my actions today. Nobody could tell whatever anybody else is doing, that doesn't have anything to do with me. I got a family that misses me. I got things that I never done before. I got things that I want to do. Like I want to go to school. I want to do good now. I don't want to be the old me. it's not gonna happen.
Okay, you admitted yourself that you had anger issues in the past. How and when did you overcome those anger issues?
I'm just sitting down with, I felt like I was around so many people that was like me, so I was just feeding into that. But sitting down with older dudes, following religion, Islam, and with humble, mature minds, like that just gave me just made me just humble myself, and now like I know how to control my anger. Like I'm good. I could walk away from things. Like a lot of things that used to get me mad don't even bother me anymore. I could.
Okay. Well, I mean, you've certainly taken every program possible, every program made available to you, and then some. You've gained a lot of skills that I hope you'll carry with you when you do get out. You know, eventually you are going to get out and you'll still be young and have a lot of life ahead of you. So, and you have a lot of options. You did auto body work, culinary arts, janitor work. You took college courses. I mean, you have a good start. And I think we could both agree that you wouldn't have had this if you didn't come to prison, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, who knows where you'd be right now, to be honest, but you certainly were not off to a good start. And I understand your surroundings were not that of the average kid. You know, I mean, I just can't imagine carrying guns and selling drugs at 11, 12 years old. So I understand you were surrounded by just negativity and the criminal environment, but you did take advantage of your time incarcerated. I'm happy to see that. And you have plans to work with your mom too in the commercial cleaning business.
Yes.
That's a great skill, you know, and you're lucky that you have the family support and they're, you know, they're willing to take you under their wings and help you, the positive ones. Tell me about the TV series that you're writing.
It's a series about like kids like me growing up thinking that like how they living is normal. So I wrote about a dude. I made this character of this old person. He'd been in jail for like 20 something years, and like he lost all contact being home due to like his sister family dying, and he really don't know like people out there. Like he don't have nobody to talk to, but his sister, son, and his friends end up all coming to jail when he find out that that's his nephew. So he around these young dudes and he see like how they talking and the stories they telling, and his side he like that used to be me, and like he want to get help for his nephew. So he end up eventually go home. He had cancer. He ended up eventually going home, meeting with old judges, meeting with old lawyers, scientists, and they come up with this program that they put all the kids in a room, and the scientists and NAACP, everybody sit behind a glass and they just let them talk. So when they talk, like let them talk freely. And when they talk, they telling stories amongst each other like it's okay. And the TV series like it will take back into that what happened, like what.
Okay.
And eventually, like I want it to be realistic because eventually, like every kid ain't gonna make it out. Every kid ain't gonna see life the way like I see life, and the ones that do make it out, and bless them. That's what I wanted to swallow.
Good. I mean, you have a lot to offer with your experiences, and if you can help a few people in the meantime, that's great. Your focus really should be giving back to your community because you will get a second chance. Your victim never will. So don't take that for granted. Thank you for speaking with me. Ms. Page?
No questions, Madam Chair.
Okay. So at this time, we're going to turn the hearing over to the Office of Victim Services for some input. Ms. Vasquez, thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Madam Chair and board members. I have a couple of family members who are here today that would like to speak. I am going to have Ms. English. You can unmute yourself. And if you wish to, you don't have to, you can turn on your camera. And this is your opportunity to address the
Good morning. I'm the victim's mother. I understand everything this young man has said, every program he went to. My thing is, when you put an animal in a cage or you lock an animal in an environment, they have to adjust to that environment. That's what he is. He's an animal. He has adjusted. Okay. When you release that animal, they go back to knowing what they know best. My son was 19. He had his whole life ahead of him. Okay. My son was a mason. He took culinary arts, HVAC, high school diploma, everything by the age of 19. This young man chose to take my son's life. Him and everyone else that was in that car. Okay? They drove around that day looking for my son. My son was running away from the car. He chose to shoot my son. He chose to shot. He made the choice to shoot my son. That was his choice. They gave him 40 years suspended after 20. It's been 11 years. 11 years that my son has been gone. Do I feel that this young man should come out after 11 years? No. He was sentenced to 40 suspended after 20. I feel that he should do the whole 20 because I don't care what he took in jail. My son is not going to come back to me. He's not going to come back to his sisters, his brothers. His grandmother died because she lost her grandson. His grandfather died because they took his life. So not only did he take my son's life, he took my parents' life as well. They died from broken hearts. So no, do I feel that this young man should come home and be able to be with his mother, his grandmother, his father? No, that young man should sit there for another 10 years. He should do the rest of his time behind bars. And I know that it doesn't matter what I say because the board of partners is going to make their decisions, whatever decisions that they want to make. It really doesn't matter what the family members say because it's up to the board of partners to do what they do. But in my opinion, that young man needs to sit there another 10 years. He should do the rest of the time that they gave to him and not be able to come home and live his life while my son is in a cold ground. I have nothing else to say. Thank you for your time.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. English. Mr. Harris, this is your opportunity to unmute yourself by pressing *6, and this is your opportunity to address the board.
Hello?
Hi.
Good morning. Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Larry Harris, and I'm Justin's father. Now, I didn't know Justin was my son for a while. So in the beginning of his life, I wasn't there because I didn't know. And his mother left the state to move back to Connecticut. She left Massachusetts to move back to Connecticut because of an abusive relationship she was involved in. And I lost touch with my son. I called Maury Povich, and I tried everything to try and get a hold of my son. Took me years to do it, and I finally got him. I finally found him. And I had two sons, two biological sons. I'm a U.S. Marine Corps veteran. I turned 18 in Marine Corps boot camp. I graduated at 17 because my birthday's in September. And I a month after I was out of high school, I went into the Marine Corps boot camp. So I turned 18 on Parris Island. I gave the Marine Corps 6 years of my life. Right now, I'm a disabled Marine Corps veteran. I try to do right by all of my children. I have a daughter left because I had a son who was killed, shot and killed. My oldest son, Tyrell, was shot and killed in 2007. Justin was killed 5 years later. That impacted me so much. This man took my last son. 5 years I lost both sons. Both sons. I can't turn to them and talk to them or talk about sports. And a lot of times I'm watching sports and stuff, and I think I'm going to call my sons and talk. And I realize I can't because they're not there. They never will be there. I'm lost. I'm 62. God willing, I'll be 63 in September. And like I said, I done a lot of things wrong in my life, but I've paid for them and I've corrected them. But I don't want this man walking the streets. I just feel it'd be a slap in the face if you let him out and not serve his time. You sentenced him to a certain amount of time, and he should do it. I cannot get my son back, no matter what. No matter what you decide today, I can never get my son back. As a Marine Corps, disabled Marine Corps veteran, please, please keep this man inside. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, Mr. Harris. Ms. Moon, this is your opportunity to unmute your phone by pressing *6, and you can address the board member search.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Good morning, everybody. My name is Phyllis Moore. I'm Justin's aunt. I'm Larry's sister, and I'm speaking on behalf of my mother, Mary Ann Marks. My mom's 81, and so this whole technology thing, she doesn't know, right? So I'm speaking on her behalf, but I want to start by saying I commend him, right? I'm listening and I'm like, I started feeling bad. Like, damn, you understand? Like he has done a lot of good things, right? But I also agree with Justin's mom. Like, you understand? He's in a very structured environment, right? So I believe, and I think that my mom would believe this as well. He's doing well because he's in a structured environment. You understand? I feel like, my mom would say that she forgives him because my mom is a very forgiving woman. But my mom also taught us that if you do the crime, you do the time. You understand? So as many good things as he's done, and I pray that God continues to lead him on the path that he's on, to continue to do wonderful things. And I hope that he can come home and be a law-abiding citizen. But he needs to pay. He needs to sit there a little bit longer and really understand the depths of what he has done. He has destroyed families. Like my brother, that's my brother. I listen to my brother cry like hysterically. You understand? My mom is crying like she doesn't understand this. So she can't, it doesn't make sense to her. Like she does, both of her grandsons. You understand? These kids have to understand there's consequences to your behavior. And thank God that you found something in your brain that says, let me turn this around. That's beautiful. And I pray that it continues. But my mom would agree that he needs to stay there and do the time that he was sentenced to. And thank you all for hearing me, and everybody have a blessed day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is all I have for this certificate case.
Thank you.
At this time, the attorneys will be afforded the opportunity to make a statement. We will now turn it over to the state's attorney. Do you wish to proceed?
Yes, thank you. I would submit that the board ought to take in consideration Mr. Humphrey's lack of candor. And I would submit there's been a lack of candor in terms of his version of what occurred that day. At the time Mr. Williams pled guilty, he admitted that he had fired out the window of the Durango. At the time he pled guilty, Mr. Humphreys also admitted to the same factual basis that there were two shooters. And this homicide occurred because Mr. Humphrey and his group of friends believed that Mr. Nalawazi and Mr. Davis were responsible for the death of Ms. Robinson. And what the defendant said here today, I would also submit, shows some sort of lack of candor in that he sticks, since his incarceration, I believe he has attempted to minimize his co-defendant's participation in this crime. I believe he testified at his brother, Roshan Robinson's habeas trial, and gave a version of events similar to today. Again, contrary to the evidence and contrary to the factual basis he admitted to, and contrary to what Mr. Williams, I believe, has already admitted to and what he's going to say here this afternoon. So I think the defendant still has this misguided sense of loyalty that I believe in large part played a role in the death of Mr. Nalawazi, that they had this, they believed they needed to avenge what had happened to Miss Robinson. I would also submit the defendant's version of events here today, he says, well, they were headed back to Stratford. The problem with that is that the car was actually moving away from Boston Avenue, which the intersection of Boston and Central, I believe, is about 10 or 12 blocks in the Stratford line. So his version they were heading back to Stratford is contrary to the fact that the Durango they were in was moving away from Stratford. So his version of events here today, again, I believe shows a lack of candor. And I believe that lack of candor to some degree indicates that he's not ready yet to be released. In this loyalty he still has to his co-defendants in his attempts to minimize their involvement while maximizing his. And it's convenient to do that after everyone has already pled guilty and been sentenced. It would have been different had he, in the pretrial stages, had he said he was the sole gunman, but that's not what happened. So I would submit that the board should take into account the lack of candor he has shown, not only in this proceeding, but in the prior proceeding on the habeas involving Mr. Robinson. So, and the board knows what Mr. Williams is going to say, and I think this should all factor into the board's ultimate decision here. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now turn it over to the private attorney. Do you wish to proceed?
I do. Thank you so much. I'd like to begin by reflecting on the language that's contained in the packet that I submitted, and it's from the Rosario decision. And I use that case, even though it's a district court case from New York, because I feel as though the language really encapsulates the balancing that the board and my client and the victim and the state's attorney go through, which is nothing that is said here today is meant to diminish the loss that Justin's family has suffered or the terrible actions of Joseph on that day. That's not what today's hearing is about, is for him to shirk his acceptance of responsibility or to avoid accountability. In fact, we see quite the opposite. But the purpose is to demonstrate that he's not the same person he was at 16 years old. Indeed, of course, as we're all aware, that's the reason that there are these juvenile parole hearings, because who an individual is at 16 is not necessarily indicative of who they will be as an adult. And again, not to diminish the loss the family has suffering, but one thing I want to make sure came through, and I'm not sure it even did from my packet or from Joseph today, is the level of grooming that truly occurred in his case. In the course of our conversations, I'm not a neophyte attorney, but I think there were so many moments. Joseph looked at me and said, how could they have appointed me this attorney who doesn't understand the community I really came up in? Because as I believe, Ms. Chairperson, you brought up, how are you getting quantities of crack cocaine to sell at 12 and 13 years old? And Joseph would say, my family had so much quote unquote credibility in the streets that I was afforded that. And I would look at him and say, how are you getting alcohol from a store at 12 years old? And he looked at me as though my question was what didn't make sense. He was a Humphrey. He walked into the store, and if he wanted to purchase alcohol, he could. In our packet, we've referenced his favorite uncle growing up, Elijah, who's the closest in age and who's currently incarcerated for murder. But 3 out of the 4 uncles are actually presently incarcerated, and the 4th is only not incarcerated because he was just released from a federal penitentiary. And I say all that, again, not to diminish culpability, but to say that the work that Joseph has had to do personally to break away from that is almost akin to leaving a gang, but even worse because it's literally his family. So for him to be able to be at a place where he can sit before the board and separate, and again, Chairperson, your question was so insightful. You might have to cut your family off and leave your family behind, but to go through that as a young man, to go through that transition of realizing I love my uncles, but I don't need to be like them, and I don't want to be like them. And as to the parole suitability factors, I think ultimately at the core of many of the factors is the question, is Joseph and the community better served by his continued incarceration, or if he were released in the community and be able to help not only himself, but help other young men who are similarly situated as he was at the time. And I'm certain, I would hope the state would not disagree with this point that there is an epidemic and a pandemic of the young men in Bridgeport and New Haven, and there has to be a better way to get to them. And one thing about Joseph is he is committed, but he's also innovative. And when you asked about his television series, one of the ideas he had was to use actual kids from the community as actors, put them in those roles. This is someone who's thought of creative ways to give back. And when I prep any of my clients for the hearings, put together their statements, I always put the onus on them and I say, what is your plan? Hope is not a plan. Let me hear your plan. And if you're telling me one of your triggers is being back in the community, how are you going to help your community while avoiding? And right away he said, I'm going to go through churches. My friend who is a basketball coach, coaches 3 teams of young men. He told me I can be an assistant coach and I can get through to them that way. I don't have to be in the streets to have a positive impact on my community. And a small anecdote that both Joseph and his mother separately told me was when he was growing up, his mother fought so hard to give him this middle-class lifestyle and take him away from the streets of Bridgeport. And he was so resistant. And she would say to him, Joseph, you can still be fly and go to school. But that wasn't what he was seeing. He was seeing his uncles with the girls and the rap music and the cars. And there was no role model in the community that spoke to him. Of course, he had his stepfather, but as an older is someone who he felt he couldn't relate to. Whereas now at 28, Joseph is someone who can come out and speak to that next generation. And I think that's such an important part of the work that the board does, is it's creating an interim generation of young men who can come back out, connect with the 15 and 16-year-olds, and keep them from sitting in here and not waiting till they go to McDougal and meet an older inmate and get quote unquote scared straight. They can see someone who's lived it, experienced it, and says, don't do what I did. Look at his half-brother who he quoted saying, 5 years is nothing. I'm going to come out and life will still be the same. And here's Joseph in jail going, oh my God, that was my mindset. Look what I've done to the Nowalski family. Look what I've done to my family. And his impulse is, I need to stop that from happening. Can he change his disciplinary record at this point? No. Has he been honest about the struggles he's gone to progress and to make sure that he doesn't revert back to his own behavior? And one of the parts of the narrative that Joseph didn't mention today is when he graduated from Tier 4, they wanted him to become an elder right away. But Joseph refused and he said, no, I want to go back to the block because I need to be able to test myself. And I need to be able to know that I can succeed, because if I can't succeed in jail, how can I expect to succeed back in the community? And so he returned to the block and did well. And again, the supervisors came to him and said, now will you be an elder? And he returned and he returned and he returned to mentor the other young men in his group. And briefly, I do just want to highlight the contrast between who he was when he came in, and not an excuse, but to just appreciate the moment when 16-year-old Joseph's being called in on his case for murder and looks across the bullpen and sees his grandmother with her own cases getting called. And he told me, as a corollary to that story, he started yelling at her, hey grandma, and the marshal yelled at him and said, stop taunting these older ladies. And then the marshal looked in the paperwork, came over and said, I'm so sorry, that is actually your grandmother. But this is a 16-year-old kid going to jail on a case across from his grandmother, coming from a home with uncles who are in and out of jail, who are glorified, and then are glorifying that lifestyle for him. So for him to go through the process of having tickets and fights, that can't be unanticipated. And that doesn't mean that it is condoned, but it is a point of progress to take someone who came up like that and who for years now has been ticket free and who has accepted accountability. Of course, do we wish it was sooner? Do we wish he spared his friends years of incarceration? Of course, but this is where he's holding now. And when we ask, is the community better served by him being incarcerated or him being released? When I think of the positive influence that someone like Joseph can have on the younger generation, well, he is respected by his peers. They do look up to him. He can be that person who, as his mom said, is fly and goes to school. That's who he is now. And he is at a point where he can share that story and be productive to the younger generation so that we're not all sitting here in 10 years hearing similar stories. And if there are no further questions from the board, I would rely on the submissions in the packet.
Okay, thank you. So, Mr. Humphrey, the panel will enter into deliberation at this time. Everyone's welcome to listen. Please don't interrupt, and we will give you our decision. Mr. Pohl.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Certainly this is a devastating crime to so many people. And we heard from the victim's mother and father and aunt, speaking for grandmother as well. There is no fixing that. And, Mr. Harris faithfully served his country for 6 years in the Marine Corps, and I respect that. My dad was a Marine, and and he gave a lot to the community, as I know that when Mr. Harris came home, he did. What I'm asked to do here is take a look at this case, realizing the age of the Mr. Humphrey when he committed this offense, what his life was like leading up to this offense, and looking at all of those things that happen with young people, devastating in the streets like this, that's still happening today. Where I'm at with this case is obviously Mr. Humphrey came from a place where there weren't any role models for positive behavior at all. In fact, quite the opposite. It wasn't a neutral kind of thing. It's you grow up like this, and what do you become? The males in Mr. Humphrey's life are, as described, and so where does the change occur? And, in looking at this case, the change has to occur in any case with the offender. And certainly, you know, everything that I'm looking at here, Mr. Humphrey has done a lot of work. He has talked about when he laid out the programs that he's taken, and he talked about voices and his impact on victims. You know, he understands that. You know, and in fact, you know, in a certain way, Mr. Humphrey's a victim himself because he's had people that he cares about killed by senseless gun violence, you know, which even drives home further, you know, his understanding of taking somebody's life the way he did, you know. He has done incredibly well. He's taken programs to address violence, to address change. He currently is a mentor in the Tier 4 program, which in itself is helping other people who come from the drug culture be able to go back out and live their life in a different way. He's done some good things with education. In terms of a plan, he doesn't have it's not that he doesn't have a plan, he actually does have a plan, and he's executed on that plan while he's been incarcerated. By, you know, he had taken auto body and wants to do diesel mechanics and knows where he wants to go to do that program. He has excellent work evaluations, which tend to, you know, once he gets the credentials, which having taken classes through Second Chance program, there's no doubt in my mind that he can go and take that program and get a decent paying job, and as well have the time to have an impact on other young people in the community. You know, I really hope, I mean, there was a concentration on brother that we don't know if his brother's going to follow Mr. Humphrey, who's going to follow his uncles. But what we do know is that if you can't help one, you got to go help somebody else. And I think the attorney made a really good connection in that he has the ability to do that based upon this and a plan. And that's another thing that, you know, the gradual release, understanding that he's been away for a while, and also having the support of his mother, who's always supported him in the community and always been a positive role model there. For all of those reasons, based on the criteria of Public Act 1584, I believe that Mr. Humphrey is a candidate for parole.
Thank you, Mr. Pohl. Ms. Page.
Thank you, Madam Chair. When I was reviewing Mr. Humphrey's file, I really was impressed by all the work that he had done and some of the insight that he provided. He clearly does show a change in his behavior from the time that he came into the facility up until today. And I really do commend him on all his efforts to turn his life around. I think Mr. Pohl said something that was very true to what everyone is experiencing today. And I think the attorney also mentioned it about these children and the guns and the senseless violence, and how this really didn't even have to occur. Like, I mean, they have this kind of mentality where they have to retaliate. Like, it's all craziness. And unfortunately, when people get these guns and they go out into these communities and think that they can take the law into their own hands and settle their own cases. Innocent people wind up losing their lives. And although he is doing well, I tend to side with the victim's family and the state's attorney in that there are consequences for your actions. And I think that this is one where he's been down for 12 years. He has a 20-year sentence. I just think that so many lives were affected by this, and that I would not be able to support him today, not because I don't think that he has done well, but I really do think that the nature of this offense and in this climate, the impact that it's had on the victim's family would support my vote to deny.
It is a horrible tragedy for everyone involved, everybody. And as the father said, and I really do appreciate the victim's family's input today, nothing we do today will bring Justin back. There's nothing we can do. I did express some concern given the disciplinary reports, although it's been 3 years, the disciplinary reports, the behavior and the following kind of behavior, the loyalty concerned me. I of course think there's still some work to do here. He has grown some in the past few years, but I do think that there's still some growing to do. And I certainly hope that he appreciates the opportunities that he'll have ahead of him when the victim will not. He's done a lot of good stuff. He really has.
He has. It's very difficult, in these situations.
He's done a lot of good things. He's been in 11 and a half years, 60% of his time. Perhaps maybe coming back in 2 years would be beneficial for him.
But yeah, that would at least be 5 years with no tickets if he's able to do that and take some more college courses. I just
So you'd be in favor of a rehear?
I would not be opposed to a rehear.
I do think that he's done well, and I do think that he's changing. I just think it, like his attorney said, it took a little bit longer for him
to grasp it
than others,
especially when he sees his family in and out of prison too. It's still impactful.
Yeah. Okay.
That would be
6. Yep. All right. Reasons for denial.
I have the nature, which is not going to
change. So I would certainly add more institutional adjustment.
Yes. And the injury and impact to the victim.
Not easy. In the matter of Joseph Humphrey, inmate number 385639, I'll make a motion to deny parole at this time for the following reasons: the nature and circumstance of the offenses, the injury and impact to the victim and the victim's family, and poor institutional adjustment as evidenced by your disciplinary reports. We'll rehear the case in 2 years, May of 2026. As indicated, that's the minimum by the Public Act, a 2-year rehear. Is there a second to motion?
There is a second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, it's a unanimous decision. Okay. All right, Mr. Humphrey, we could not grant you parole today, but we do recognize the efforts that you've put forth, and we want you to continue on your path. We'll see you again in 2 years. That's the soonest we can do by statute. Keep doing the good work. Stay out of trouble, and keep trying to help others, most importantly. Okay, we thank everyone for their appearance here today, especially the victims' family members.
This concludes the 1584 hearing for Joseph Humphrey, 389-639. It is 10:39 a.m.
We'll take a 5-minute recess.
That's not that right. I can usually free. Do you what they're really saying? You are gonna get it. Look at it. They did not.
Okay, before we unpack this, what we're going to do, because I think it's most effective, is we are going to watch his co-defendants parole hearing, which took place the same day, about 2 hours later. The reason I left this part, the tail end, where it shows the attorney talking and then sitting and talking to him, is just because for me, I just didn't see them make eye contact or seem like they were, had any type of relationship going on. And I thought it was important to show the end, at least for me, that I saw, okay, they're, she's sitting there talking to him and they're going through the whole thing. So it was, I just, to dispel anything, I kept that and showed it there at the end. Okay. So we'll watch again this hearing, and then I'll unpack it with all the details that we have. And I'm also going to fast forward through the opening statement because it's about 20 minutes long. And again, if you want to see his opening statement, you can email me and I'll send you the full raw version. With that, let's jump in.
I think we're muted. Yeah. No. You're muted. Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, unmute them.
They do it.
No, I just got nervous.
Good afternoon, Mr. Williams.
Good afternoon.
My name is Parole Officer Logan. Today is Friday, May 24, 2024, and this is a Public Act 1584 hearing of the Connecticut Board of Pardons and Paroles. Mr. Williams, please state your name and inmate number for the record.
Jaquan T. Williams, 393635.
This is a public hearing in accordance with Chapter 14, Freedom of Information Act, Connecticut General Statute 1200, which applies to this procedure. Mr. Williams, if you have any questions concerning the above, please bring your questions to the attention of the panel at this time.
No.
Again, this is a public hearing. Do you have any questions and are you willing to proceed at this time?
Let's proceed.
Yes.
This 1584 hearing is being conducted in consideration of the parole application for Jaquan Williams, who is serving 40 years, executed suspended after serving 20 years, followed by 5 years probation for manslaughter first firearm, 20 years concurrent for conspiracy to commit murder, and 5 years concurrent for carrying a pistol without a permit. Total effective sentence is 40 years, executed suspended after 20 years, followed by 5 years probation. There is victim input in this case. There is an offender accountability plan for the offender. It has been reviewed and shows the offender has completed good intentions, bad choices, voices, tier 2, anger management, people empowering people. He is a janitor in the AP room. He has earned his GED. He is also certified as a cosmetologist. He is a True Unit mentor and completed several programs within the True Unit. And he's also taken business classes 1 and 2. Utilizing the statewide collaborative offender risk evaluation system, the offender's overall score on the RT falls within the moderate range of risk for recidivism. Mr. Williams, this is your opportunity to express to the board why you believe you should be granted parole. You may begin.
Good afternoon, everyone. I truly appreciate the opportunity to address the board and everyone here present today. Thank you. I would like to begin by addressing Mr. Nawalzy's family, specifically his mother. Ma'am, due to all the chaos in the courtroom on the day of my sentencing, I was never given a chance to hear your statement until last October, when I was afforded the opportunity to read what you have prepared. For the past 7 months, I have carried around your statement as a constant reminder of the pain and suffering I left on you and your family. There's not a day that goes by that I don't reflect on all my decisions that contributed to your son's death. Everything that you said was correct. I was selfish. I was ignorant. I was a coward that hid inside a vehicle and shot at a group of young men over a vulgar altercation. I was a cold and immature boy who at the time did not know how to value life, whether it was someone else's or my own. I know it may be hard to believe, but I'm here today not as the 17-year-old misguided boy, but an almost 30-year-old man. In the time between then and now, I have realized that a major reason why I sit before you under these circumstances is because I had adopted a value system that completely devalued human life. Ma'am, you're completely right in saying I had no morals, but it wasn't because I was raised on you. Instead, I lacked morals because I made an unwise decision to pursue a negative lifestyle that required me to disregard morality altogether. I want you to know that on the day my co-defendants and I were being sentenced, I never partook in smiling in the presence of your agony. Needless to say, however, I'm still responsible for this disrespect you were made to endure because it was my actions that placed us there in that courtroom. I am terribly sorry for all your emotional turbulence I have caused you. I apologize. I know me saying those words may not mean much, but I mean each and every word. I had no right to take a life that was so meaningful and precious from you and your loved ones. I now understand that the value of life is immeasurable, and that's something I disregarded. That's why for the past decade, I have been giving my all towards educating the youth on stopping the cycle that has impacted so many negatively. I would like to state clearly that my intentions today are not to cause any more harm to your family. However, I would like to provide you all with the clarity and understanding that I believe you deserve. I would like to begin talking about my upbringing, and in doing so, I want to make it explicitly clear that none of what I've been through justifies my actions. Rather, I share with you all my story as a means to help those present here today understand how I've ended up seated here. I was the second born to a 16-year-old single mother by the name of Shane Williams at St. Vincent's Hospital in Bridgeport, Connecticut. I grew up in the hollow section of Bridgeport, spending my earliest years at the Charles F. Green homes, better known as the Greens. Reflecting upon my earliest memories as a child, one day I can vividly remember is watching my mother struggle to survive economically. This often meant having to watch my mother receive government assistance, work dead-end jobs, and worst of all, risk her freedom selling drugs just to make ends meet. Although my mother tried her best to keep me sheltered from the negativity surrounding my community, unfortunately, however, the same negativity she tried to protect me from, she herself also brought into my household. In my community. Until then, I will continue to be a strong role model for young men to see what they can become when they apply themselves. I would like to thank the board for allowing me this chance to articulate my change and transformation, and for giving me the opportunity to address the family and loved ones of Mr. Nawalzy. I would like to thank the family of Mr. Nawalzy for hearing me out, although this is a difficult hearing to sit through. I again express my deepest apologies and take full responsibility for my actions. Not a day goes by that I don't feel a strong sense of sorrow, shame, and remorse for what I put your family through due to my actions and decisions. My recklessness and carelessness was uncalled for that day, and I can't imagine the extent to which your family lives will forever alter. I'm sorry. Once again, I would like to thank you for your time and opportunity to come before the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Williams, for your statement. All we can see on the screen is Mr. DeJoseph, very large, and Attorney Jones and the social worker. We need you to switch seats Mr.
Oh,
Williams,
sorry.
so that we could see you. No, it's fine. You were cut off.
Sorry. I apologize, man.
Okay,
Well, since the social worker isn't speaking.
perfect.
There.
Makes sense.
Yeah, no, it's fine. All right, thank you for your very thorough statement, sir. This panel has reviewed your entire case file, which includes everything from the time of your arrest and the court proceedings through your incarceration. We received a memorandum from your attorney, so we're very well versed, and we do have questions for you. When we're done with our questioning, we'll turn the hearing over to the Office of Victim Services for input. And then your attorney and the state's attorney will have the opportunities to speak. Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
We'll begin today with my colleague, Mr. Pohl. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon, Mr. Williams.
Good afternoon, sir.
That was a very thorough, well put together statement that we've got to the heart of a lot of different matters. And that's important. So one of the things that we are dealing with today is that we had your co-defendant as the first case.
Yes.
So can you tell us exactly what happened in the car that day?
Yes. I was picked up from the Charles F. Green's home by my four co-defendants. We were on our way to go see two female individuals by the name of Tula and Essence. While we were on the way to see the two individuals, we came across Mr. Nawalzi and his friend Brandon. We were exchanging words off of geographical differences, and that's when someone had reached for the door. When someone had reached for the door, that's when I pulled the gun off my hip and I started shooting in the area of them. We sped off, and when we went up Boston Ave, we took a right on Central Ave. When we took a right on Central Ave, that's when we were stopped by an officer in a big like Tonka truck van, and that's when I was arrested and placed in custody of the police department.
So when you took a right, were you going towards Stratford or away from it?
We was going towards Stratford. Central Ave is going towards Stratford.
Okay. So here's I hate to talk about two different cases at once, but in the first case, this morning, Mr. Humphrey said that he had both guns and he was the one that was shooting both guns.
No, sir. I myself had a firearm. Today I am acknowledging that I did have a firearm. I did shoot at Mr. Nawalzi and his friend. I don't know why he's saying that, but I'm telling you the truth. Yeah.
Okay. Because certainly that's what we hope to, the court supposed to try to get to that, but sometimes when there's, people are pleading or filing habeases or what have you, sometimes there's a couple of sets of facts about the same case. And, I'm just going to trust what you just told me.
Yes, sir.
So here's where I am. You've done a lot of really good work. And let me just say to start with, the victims in this case are very, very hurt. They had a loved one taken from them, and their lives are not the same, And the thing is that what you did in that statement, you understand that.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do, sir.
And I think one of the big reasons why you might understand it so well, you're you're not just in the tree program, you're facilitating some groups, brethren, right?
Yes.
And one of those groups happens to be Voices.
Yes.
So can you tell me what the loss is or about the loss victims are dealing with?
I can only imagine the extent to where their lives will forever be altered, because in Voices, I learned that the ripple effect of my actions is causing the pain and suffering of Mr. Nawalzy's family. Every day when I wake up, I think about that. Every day I wake up, like, why did I take a young man who had a promising future from his family? I had no right to do that. So when, like, with facilitating Voices, I got a better understanding of empathy. I was able to not only reflect, but also put myself in the shoes of his family members, because I've also lost individuals due to gun violence. So when I think about that, I think about, I don't want to be a hypocrite, because I would want somebody to be held accountable also. So when I facilitate Voices, I try to stress that, like, your actions doesn't just hurt one person. It's a ripple effect. It hurts a lot of individuals, the mother, the father, the sister, the brother.
Right. So
everybody,
yeah.
Everybody, even in the community, you have individuals who are scared, who are living in fear because of my negative actions. So that's something I try to express through facilitation of Voices.
So here you have, I recognize what you had talked about with facing gun violence yourself, the loss of two friends when you were 11 and 15. But then you get here to where you were 17, right? Yes. 16 or 17?
Yo, 17, sir.
And you take somebody's life.
Yes, sir. And that's something I think about every day, because I was in that state of ignorance. I was lost and I was angry. And I believed at the time that carrying a firearm was the best way to keep myself safe. But as I had time to reflect and gather my thoughts, I just was being a follower. I had no right to take a life over geographical differences. I had no right to take a life, period.
And then you have this young man who he hadn't done anything, right?
No, you haven't. No, sir.
Yeah, he's gone.
Yes.
So
I think he's just.
way, there's nothing that can be done about that. There's nothing to change that. But there is something that can be done to change that for other mothers and other families.
Yes.
And I'll tell you that I'm incredibly impressed with the TRUE program. Right? You did a really good job with your statement, with my questions. And for me, there's a great deal of growth and a lot to show for giving back to people inside that need the support. So thank you for answering my questions. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Mr. Cole. Mr. Williams, what kind of gun were you firing during the offense?
A 22.
Okay, so I'm sure you're aware there were two guns being shot.
Yes, ma'am.
So who had the other gun?
Mr. Humphrey.
Okay. So you were both shooting out the windows.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, but you're certain that you shot the victim?
Yes, ma'am.
Huh. So why is it that no one has ever, I mean, we still have two different versions because, according to your co-defendant, he shot both guns with two hands. But anyhow, why is it that no one told these stories when it happened? No one gave these versions.
because due to my counsel, at the time, he just told me to say, due to my counsel, I just listened to my counsel, man.
But you allowed other people to go to prison for something you did.
Yes, and
You
I
get the
regret
same
that.
exact sentence as you.
Yes, ma'am, and I regret that. That's why today I am taking full responsibility for my actions. And even when I got sentenced, I still tried to take full responsibility for my actions. Even though I didn't know how to articulate myself at the time, I did say I was sorry. And I wish at the time I could have had articulated myself in a respectful manner to tell individuals that it was my fault that Mr. Nawalzi died. I'm so sorry for that.
Why do you think your co-defendant would say that he did everything?
Ma'am, I do not know. I haven't talked to my co-defendant since I was sentenced. The last time I saw him, ma'am, I do not know, to be honest with you. I don't know why he
You
would.
didn't spend any time in the same facility?
Yes, I have, but then I was taken to segregation where I was transferred here because due to the court order, I'm not supposed to be nowhere around him. I have a court profile around him. I'm not supposed to be nowhere around him. I don't know how DOC messed that up, but as soon as they figured out what it was, I was sent to RT and sent straight here.
It's just so troubling to me that after 11 and a half years in prison, somebody's still lying. I don't understand it. It makes no sense.
Yes, ma'am. I'm
And
telling
it's
you.
also troubling that it takes 11 and a half years. So someone else did 11 and a half years already, and we'll do a lot more because he's not getting out anytime in the very near future for something that he didn't do. It's just, I don't understand it, but we'll move on from that. It was also our understanding that the reason the victim, Justin, was a target was because you and your co-defendant suspected that he was responsible for the death of your friend, Miss Robinson. And you're saying it's a neighborhood thing now. So which is it?
Miss, it is a neighborhood thing. As far as it being a hit for Keaji Robinson, it was not that. Ma'am, it was really over from being parts of different sides. That's what the argument was over. I'm telling you the God honest truth.
But why would two other people say that you all believed that Justin shot her and killed her?
Ma'am, I don't know why. I didn't believe that Mr. Nawalzi killed anyone. I was not aware of that. I was not around that. I did not know nothing of that.
But you were with the people that we're referencing. Do you know who Kyle Brody is?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you commit a robbery with him?
No, ma'am. No, I did not commit a robbery with him. Ma'am, ma'am, I did not commit a robbery with him. Somebody was robbed, and the individual that was being robbed, he only knew me. So his mother was a police officer or had connections to the police department. When he pulled up, he can tell you, he vouched for it. That's why my charges was later nolly, because
who could vouch for you?
The individual who said they were robbed. He even told his mother it wasn't me that robbed them. I was just around the individual who he thought had robbed them. Ma'am, I was never there for that. That's why that case was nolly.
Well, the case was nolly, but people say that you were there. So it's just interesting to me that we got a bunch of different stories here today. And you're all intertwined with each other, but it really doesn't make sense. You've done very well. You have done very well. You've taken all the programs. You've been working throughout your incarceration. You're a mentor to others. And even more remarkable is that you've only received one disciplinary report in 11 and a half years. When everyone else we've seen had a bunch of them, a lot of them. You have a good plan for your release. There's a lot of positives here, and I do see some growth. I do see that you've changed and rehabilitated, but the circumstances around this offense are just so very concerning. And you're all young. You're all going to move on with your lives, and the victim's gone forever. Doesn't have that opportunity. So I hope you're sincere in and everything that you say here today. I'm going to turn over to my colleague, Ms. Page. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to echo some of your sentiments because I was just reviewing as you were speaking with Mr. Williams, what some of the other co-defendants had said, because at this point, we've seen all 5 of them.
Yeah.
And you and I were on 4,
Right.
of the 5.
Yeah.
And each of them tell a different story. So it's just amazing to me that 1, 2, I think 3 of the 5 of them say that you guys were driving around looking for this guy.
Right.
That you guys had guns in the car. One person said the car stopped. Another person said it never stopped. It kept going. Like I agree with the chair that I guess we'll never really know the truth.
But that's how the victims, at this point, they deserve to know the truth.
They really do.
That's the worst part.
They really do.
Get it.
You know, and I agree though, you have done well, and I really don't have any questions. I just wanted to point that out, but I know the victims are tired today. So
Yeah, well, they have to be, yeah. All right, yeah, let's turn it over to them. So at this time, we'll turn the hearing over to the Office of Victim Services. Ms. Vasquez, thank you for your assistance.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and board members. Thank you so much. I have on the phone Ms. English that she would like to address the board members, and I also have 2 others who are waiting as well. Ms. English, you may go ahead and start, and you can address the board members. Ms. English, you can go ahead and start. Madam Chair, it looks like I lost them. I'm gonna give the opportunity to somebody else who is on.
Okay.
I'm gonna grant this opportunity to Mr. Harris. You can go ahead and unmute yourself by pressing *6, and you may begin addressing the board members directly.
Good afternoon. This has been an emotional day for me, very emotional. Went through this, with these guys. And I'm going to say, first of all, I didn't mention this earlier. I am a Marine Corps veteran. And these guys were young. They at the age 16 to 20 or whatever, they chose to do the wrong thing. At 17, my birthday is in September, so I graduated at 17. At 17, I chose to go into the United States Marine Corps for 6 years. And I just know we all have choices in life. Now, I'm not an angel. I messed up before. I've been in prison myself for violence. But I didn't take a parole. I served my full time because I knew I did wrong. And I served my time. I didn't cry about it. I did it. It was a stupid thing. And I hurt people because of it. But I served my time. I think these men need to serve their time. Justin, I didn't know he was my son for a while. And then I realized that he was my son. And I tried to do the best I could and get to know him and spend time with him. Prior to that, 5 years before Justin was killed, my oldest son, Tyrell, was in Jacksonville, Florida, and was shot and killed. So when Justin was killed, I mean, it really, really took a lot out of me. And I came home. I got a job at Amtrak. I worked part-time at Domino's Pizza. I worked 2 jobs for like 5 years. So my kids would have what they wanted and needed. I've always been a hardworking individual. I didn't blame society. I didn't blame anyone. I grew up in Harlem, New York, but I did not blame my upbringing or my surroundings on my actions. I did what I did. I was old enough to understand what I did. And so were they. I just ask you, please. I'm a disabled Marine Corps veteran right now, and I ask you, please, don't make life any more difficult for me by releasing this man. I'm asking you to let him serve his time. He may have done well, but he still needs to pay for his actions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. And I have on the phone Miss English. You may go ahead and begin to address the board members.
Hi, I'm Justin's mother. I sat here and I listened to his conversation about how he was brought up, how he's seen his mother abused. Well, my son's seen me abused plenty of times. That never caused them to go out there and pick up a gun, shoot nobody. And then I listened to the story from him and the other person. He murdered my son. He was sentenced to 40 years suspended after 25 years probation. He needs to do the rest of his time. Because not only did he hurt me, he hurt my son's father, my son's grandparents, his siblings. Two of my kids cannot function right now because of what they did to my son. I don't care what he accomplished in jail, because if he wasn't in jail, would he have accomplished anything? No, he would be out here on the street doing the same goddamn thing he was doing when he was out here. So no, his ass needs to sit there behind them bars and serve the rest of that damn time, because he took my baby. I can't get my baby back. My baby was a popular high school student. And no, nobody grabbed the car door. You were parked on the corner of Shelton and Helen Street. Parked there for a whole half an hour before you turned and came down around the corner and started shooting at my son. We all saw that burgundy Durango there. So you're lying. You're a liar. You have no morals. You have no values. You have no values of life. You need to sit there and rot like a fucking dog. Now, I was nice on the other ones, but you are a fucking liar. You need to rot in fucking jail. You need to sit there and fucking rot for what you did to my fucking baby, and for my mother and my father dying after you killed my son. Dying from broken hearts. You need to sit there and rot. All of y'all need to sit there and fucking rot in jail. You have no values. You have no morals. I don't give a goddamn what you accomplished in that fucking place. And I was nice about all the other ones, but I'm not being nice no more. I'm tired of being nice, because every time I turn around and I'm nice and I speak nice, the fucking parole board ends up giving y'all parole. So no, I'm not being nice. You and your friends are fucking cowards. Like I said, you shot my son in the fucking back. He was running away from y'all, and y'all shot him in the fucking back. You're a coward. You're a coward. Your friends are fucking cowards. How would it feel if somebody was to shoot you or your fucking brothers in the fucking back? How would your fucking family feel if they was never ever to be able to see you, touch you, hold you, kiss you, nothing? See no fucking grandkids, never had no grandkids by you. How the fuck do you think they would fucking feel? I hate you. I can't stand you.
Miss English, Miss English, I'm so sorry to interrupt you. If you can refrain from just speaking directly to the board members, that would be
okay.
great.
I'm speaking to the board. Everything that I just said, I'm saying to the board. That's to the board. It's not to him. I'm speaking to the board. Everything I just said is to the board. He's to the board. He's a coward. He needs to stay there. He needs to do the rest of his time. He is a coward. Because of him, I have no mother. Because of him, I have no father. Because of him, I lost several nieces and nephews because of him. Because Justin was their angel. He was their everything. I have two nieces that committed suicide because Justin is no longer here. He has, you have no, I'm talking to the board. You have no idea what what has happened since since he took my son's life. I've lost several nieces and nephews because they couldn't handle my son's death. I tried to commit suicide because I couldn't handle my son's death. So I'm asking you to let that boy stay there for the next 8, 9 years, however many years he got left. This is the first time I have ever went off on any of these parole hearings. I have nothing else to say. You can mute me.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. English. At this time, board members, I'm also going to allow the opportunity for Ms. Moore to please unmute yourself by pressing *6, and you can address the board directly. But remember, please address the board. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm speaking on behalf of my mother, Mary Ann Marks, who is Justin's grandmother. It's a tragedy. It's a tragedy, right? It's a tragedy. I'm kind of like lost after hearing Jackie speak. Like I have sons, and I just can't imagine, right? But I just feel like, although he has done some really good things in prison, and he needs to continue on the path that he's on, but I feel like I speak for my mother once again that he needs to serve the time that he was given. He needs to serve the time that he was given. I know he did the program with the understanding the victim's pain, but like he said earlier when he made his statement, certain things you have to live through to really understand that type of pain. So continue on the road that you're on, and but I feel like I said again, I speak for my mother and I speak for the rest of my family. He needs to do the rest of his time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's it? Okay, Ms. Vasquez, we're all set?
Sorry, I thought I had unmuted myself. Yes, we're all set. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, before we deliberate, we're going to take a 3-minute recess. We will be right back. Thanks.
I feel so bad, bro. I'm sorry, bro.
All set. Okay, thank you for your patience. At this time, the panel will enter into deliberation. What's? Oh, I'm sorry. We're not done. We're not done. We have attorneys to speak here. I tried to skip them.
We will now turn it over to the state's attorney. Do you wish to proceed?
Yes, thank you. So I understand the board has heard several different versions from the 5 co-defendants of what happened with respect to the homicide of Mr. Nalawazi. State believed that the evidence was that Roshan Robinson was the driver, Mr. Williams was the front seat passenger, Mr. Humphrey was passenger side by the window in the back seat, and then Mr. Minor and Mr. Brown were either in the middle or on the driver's side. 2 different caliber guns were fired outside the car by Mr. Williams and by Mr. Humphrey. There was no way of knowing who fired which gun, so the state proceeded on the theory that Mr. Robinson was an accessory to these offenses as the getaway driver, and that all 5 were involved in the conspiracy, and that this particular defendant, Mr. Humphrey, were the shooters. I would submit to the court that Mr. Williams' version of events today is more accurate and more in line with the evidence than Mr. Humphrey's version of events was. And I think that should count for something. That his version of events is, I believe, more accurate reflects the evidence that was going to be presented had this case gone to trial. The only thing I would take issue is look, Central Avenue runs north-south. It starts at Boston Avenue and ends at Long Island Sound. So Central Avenue does not move towards Stratford. So they couldn't have been going towards Stratford because that road runs from Boston Avenue down to the water. It runs north-south. When Mr. Williams was sentenced, it was a very chaotic scene at the courthouse. I want to say a big brawl spilled out into the street and continued in the middle of Fairfield Avenue and Main Street. I would submit that of all the people involved in this case, including Mr. Brody and that group of people, who, although didn't participate in this criminal offense, were certainly involved in the ongoing criminal activity at question here. Mr. Williams is the only one who showed any sort of remorse in court. So I think that the remorse he is expressing now, I do not think is newly found. And I think that his sentencing hearing may have been cut a little bit short because of the chaotic things going on in the courthouse, but he did seem to me, at least, to be expressing remorse at his sentencing hearing, and I think that should count for something. On the other hand, this board has to balance. It's a serious offense. I mean, he took a life, and although he's saying now, and look, to answer the board's questions, I want to say Mr. Humphrey is saying what he's saying now in an effort to assist Mr. Robinson.
Yeah.
Who, as this board knows, is Mr. Humphrey's brother. So I would submit to the court that, although legally I don't think that what Mr. Humphrey says helps Mr. Robinson, because the state's theory all along was that Mr. Robinson was a getaway driver and always had accessorial liability. I would submit that Mr. Humphrey's efforts that we have seen both in Mr. Robinson's habeas trial and here today are a misguided attempt to assist Mr. Robinson, for what my theory is worth. So, but the board has to balance this with the serious nature of the crime. I think Mr. Nalawazi was sought after by this group and killed because this group believed he had killed Miss Robinson. I mean, look, there was overwhelming evidence that was going to be presented about the motive being to avenge Miss Robinson. You know, in the pre-trial stages, their lawyers were representing these five guys that didn't even know each other, and then we pulled all these photographs off Facebook of them together at Miss Robinson's memorial service and everything else. So I think that in Mr. Williams' favor is that he gave the most accurate version, I believe the most truthful account of what has happened so far of the ones I've heard. And I think his remorse, both at sentencing and today, I think is consistent. And what counts against him is the serious nature of this offense and the callous manner in which Mr. Nalawazi was killed. And look, I'm going to be honest, I don't think the board has an easy decision here, and I'm glad I don't have to make it. But thank you for your time.
Thank you.
We will now turn it over to the public defender. Do you wish to proceed?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to address the board today on behalf of my client. I can assure you, the board members, that my client does not take this opportunity lightly. We also wish to thank the family members of Mr. Nalawazi for being here today. We acknowledge that this must be a difficult process for them to endure. Before I talk about Jaquan, I just want to address a couple of issues. And firstly, that would be that he entered into a plea agreement in court under the Alford Doctrine My client always accepted responsibility for taking the life of Mr. Nawalzi. Although Jaquan admits that his conduct took the life of Mr. Nawalzi, his disagreement lies with the allegation that he had conspired or had a plan to kill Mr. Nawalzi that day. And as I'm sure you're aware from reading both the plea transcript as well as the sentencing transcript, all of the co-defendants' plea agreements were contingent upon all of them accepting those agreements, and that if one of them did not accept the agreement, then they were all off the table. And I think that certainly played a role in why you had all of these individuals in court entering into guilty pleas. And in regards to the DIS summary that was submitted by the parole officer, Logan, I just wanted to make a couple of corrections, and I did submit, and hopefully the board had the opportunity to review, a copy of his juvenile court history. We did submit that, but I did not receive anything back indicating that it was received, so I'm hopeful that you have it. But just to touch upon, he did have 2 juvenile convictions, one being for larceny in the 2nd degree, another one being for a conspiracy to larceny in the 3rd degree. And those took place, the first one having taken place in March of 2011, and the second one was December of 2011. And if you look at the juvenile history, it does indicate that both of those probations were completed successfully, which is counter to what the DIS summary indicated, that they were not completed successfully. So I am just pointing that out. Specifically, it will tell you that his probation began on March 14th of 2011, and it ended on September 14th of 2011. And the matter was closed on that same day, and that would indicate that the probation was successful. And in regards to the second matter, it will tell you that the probation began on December 28th of 2011, that it ended on June 28th of 2012, and that it was also closed that same day, which would indicate that it was a successful completion of probation. The DIS summary also listed that he did have 2 violations of probation with no disposition listed, and I would just indicate that the disposition, according to his juvenile history, is that those matters were nollied in court. The violation of probation's proceedings began on January 27th of 2012, and they were nollied a month later on February 27th of 2012. And then that would indicate that they would no longer, they should no longer be on his record, though we do know that they were nollied. And though these are minor points to be bringing up, I just bring them up just to note that it shows that with the right structure in the community, that Jaquan has been successful and that he has demonstrated that in the past, which leads me to conclude with the structure of parole supervision. I believe he will again be successful in the community. As he sits here before you today, Jaquan has completed nearly 12 years of incarceration of a 20-year sentence. And during that nearly 12 years of incarceration, he has put in the work and has made a great transformation. His juvenile history, inclusive of the instant offense, encompasses a 14-month period of time in his life that although it will remain a part of him, hopefully it will not always define him. He's not the same 17-year-old that entered the Department of Corrections. When Jaquan first entered the Department of Corrections as a young, impulsive follower, admittedly, hanging around the streets of Bridgeport, selling drugs and getting into trouble, and socializing with the wrong people, I think it's evident that during his time of incarceration, he's matured, he's educated himself, he's taken advantage of all the programming available to him within DOC. He's been both a mentee and a mentor in the True Unit at Cheshire. He's grown from attending programming to facilitating and creating programs as a mentor within the True Unit. Lastly, he's completed school, attaining his GED early on, and then obtaining his cosmetology license. He's held full-time employment and most recently been employed in the Admissions and Processing Center within the facility. I think it's important to look at the reference letters that were submitted on Jaquan's behalf. And those letters to me speak volumes. They're not only written by family members in the community and friends in the community, but also by inmates that he's mentored, inmates that have mentored him, as well as staff members, and 2 of them being captains within the facility in the True Unit. I think these various types of people that Jaquan has touched and left an impression on in their lives, on his life, nearly for the 12 years that he's been incarcerated, is a good indicator of his anticipated success in the community. As we know, success in the community, whether through your employment, attending school, or just being a member of your community, is contingent upon being able to have productive relationships with all types of people. And I think it's clear that Jaquan possesses those skills. I urge you to grant early release by way of parole. Jaquan has completed his OAP, all of the programs that were on his OAP. He's completed additional programming, and most notably through his participation in the TRUE unit. He has nothing more within DOC to complete. I think it's time for him to be given an opportunity to utilize his skills he has gained over the near 12 years that he's been in custody, and give back to the community that he took from. Thank you.
Okay, so now we will enter into deliberation and we will come back to you with our decision, Mr. Williams.
Thank you.
Mr. Paul.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Certainly this, we've heard this case twice today. And the family has gone through a lot in dealing with this as well twice today, you know. And I can understand, although not fully at all,
Right, because
how mother and father who had somebody taken,
right,
it was part of them, and how that affected, you know, family throughout. And there's nothing that can be undone about what happened. The only thing that Mr. Williams can do is do something so it doesn't create further victims. And what Mr. Williams has done is he's gone in and taken programs. And not just taking programs, because you can go into an incarceration and take programs. But he's gone through and taken programs, really gotten something out of it, to the point where staff at the facility thought it wise that they put him into the TRUE unit to help people who don't yet have, and hopefully never have, manslaughter with a firearm, or manslaughter at all, or conspiracy to commit murder, anything like that, in their lifetime. You know, hopefully they turn around and go home and do the kinds of things that Mr. Williams will do if given an opportunity in the community before they commit offenses like that. And certainly that's you know, I appreciate the state's attorney and his take on this. I appreciate that, you know, really knowing that Mr. Williams early on was very remorseful over this, and that he went into this incarceration knowing what he's done, and tried to do something to change this, to make it, you know, an impact while he is incarcerated. He's had one disciplinary report since he's been in, and that was 6 years ago. He has taken part of the first, one of the first vocational programs, and made student of the quarter on top of it, which he's applying himself in what he does, you know. He's taken some college classes, and he wants to come out here and really make something of himself, and at the same time give back. You know, he talked about some of the things that he he talks about that are important is that he has dealt with his own trauma, which helps him through programming, which helps him help others, which a lot of times is a catalyst to the types of offenses that we see, you know, and if we reflect on where Mr. Williams came from, there's a lot of trauma in that community among young people. And certainly it's a case where Mr. Williams could be able to help in that way. He talked about the group Mothers United for Healing, which is important. It's other mothers like the victim in this case, the victim's mother in this case, who have lost people, lost their own sons and daughters because of this. And, you know, Mr. Williams going in and being a part of that is incredibly important. He knows what he's doing in terms of career and the kind of thing that, you know, he needs to do school, but he also needs to work. And what's important to him is the work piece or the school piece, so he can better himself and is better able to help others. He talked about C-card, not only having a recovery coach, but wanting to become one. And certainly substance use is a huge thing. And I just, you know, in this particular case, for me, the 1584, the Juvenile Reconsideration Code, I think Mr. Williams exemplifies what it is that someone needs to do while serving a period of incarceration to come to a place where they have changed enough to come back out to the community and have the kind of supervision that would be a good thing. So for those reasons, I would support Mr. Williams' parole today.
Thank you, Mr. Poe. I agree with everything that you've said. I really do want to thank the victim's family for being here today. It's been a long day, and I'm so sorry for your pain and suffering. Ms. Page?
Madam Chair, I agree. I couldn't imagine. My heart aches for the mother. I mean, there's, you know, and the father, yes, and the grandma. I mean, all the loss that they have encountered because of this tragedy. And I really pray that they get the healing that they need, but that's out of my hands.
Mm-hmm.
So, of all the people today, I have to be honest, this was where I really thought was deserving.
Right.
So,
Yeah. All right. I have victims' family members, JE, PHM, LH, WS, and then co-defendants and a half. Yeah.
That's it.
That's it.
Okay. In the matter of Jaquan Williams, inmate number 393635, I'll make a motion to grant parole on November 1st, 2024, with the following conditions. You're to have no contact with the family of the victim. Their initials are JE, PHM, LH, LWS. No contact with your co-defendants, Rashawn Robinson, Kane Minor, Khalik Brown, or Joseph Humphrey, and you'll parole to a halfway house. Is there a second? All in favor? Aye. Okay, do you understand? Do you have any questions, Mr. Williams?
I'm thankful. I'm just sorry. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
All right. Well, go out there and do good. That's the only thing you can do now to make
Yes,
things
ma'am.
better.
Yes,
All
ma'am.
right, thank you everyone for your participation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This concludes the 1584 hearing. It's 3:09 p.m.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Now, to start, remember, they all took plea deals. So there's no court transcripts, there's no appeals. There's actually a limited amount of information that we'll go through that Richard was able to provide. Thank you. It's been a marathon, so I'll do this quickly, and I don't think it needs to go on that long. There's just not that much information anyways. But how did you feel about him getting approved? For some additional context, there were 5 people involved. There were 5 people in the car. So you had Rashawn Robinson, who was Joseph Jerome's Humphrey, the first person in the docket's brother, which the DA touched on. He was sentenced to 20 years as the driver, but he was released. I'm not sure how much time he served of that. Then you had the other 2 less involved passengers, Kayan, who got 11 years, and Khalik Brown, who got 9 years. All 3 of them were out already. Then you're left with the 2 co-defendants today, Joseph Jerome Humphrey and Jaquan Williams, who the state believes that both were the shooters. We saw the first one come up, who claims, and I still have no idea why, that he held both weapons in his hands. And I just don't understand why he's saying that. I heard the DA touch on how he thought that maybe it was some type of attempt to help but his brother's out already. So I am lost. This hearing took a long time to do. I had to edit out a lot of large portions. Again, if you want the raw footage, I'll give it to you. Like the large portions I edited out was some of, the opening statements and also Mr. Pohl's questioning on some of them, because it was really just, unnecessary. I listened to this over and over and over and over, trying to make sense of it. And I guess the first part, it's like, what is the guy who's up first, Joseph? Why would he come out and say that he was the one holding both guns? He has representation. He has an attorney. He has planning for this. He has rehearsal. How do you get to the point where they somehow come up with the idea that he's going to say that he's holding both weapons? And it doesn't make any sense. Just even sit in a passenger side window and try to put your hands like sideways where you're. It's just hard to believe, even from a practical standpoint. 2 people, 2 guns. Then why would you have Jaquan admit to something he didn't do? But I'm just trying to make logic of this. It doesn't. Why? Can someone tell me how that happens? Why would someone claim that they're the only shooter? How could it be that you get to the point where you're going to get out and you lie at your hearing? What is in it for him? I'm just so confused with it. Is it just me? Because I'm trying to make sense of this. It doesn't make any sense. And the first guy, Joseph, I really, I didn't think he should have gotten at it all. Remember, they only have a 20-year sentence. You say only, but they've already served 12 years of it. So he's going to get parole opportunity in 2 more years if he's going to go right up free, and then maybe they'll let him out. And it's kind of like we're all forgetting, and I don't know if we're all forgetting, but the victims in this case, the father and the mother, and they have to go through this over and over and over and over again. I mean, they attended the 3 parole hearings of the 3 prior that had gotten out, and then they had to attend 2 parole hearings in one day, within hours apart. Just you can hear they're just tired. You heard it. The mom was able to stay, hold it together only for so long before her rightful emotions came out, and then at the end of it, when you have Jaquan get released, you just got to feel that she feels victimized all over again. Now, I agree that Jaquan showed a certain level of remorse that I don't think we're accustomed to seeing, and I don't think it was fake. I mean, there were the hot mics when they were taking a break, when he kept saying he feels bad. I kept those in there because I thought it was important, but he didn't know he was being recorded. And even the DA said he was the only one that seemed to feel bad at the court hearings. I actually do think he has true remorse, but then also remember, he pulled the trigger. One write-up is impressive, and he's not. It's impressive for someone who came off it's not like he's hurt children, because it's not impressive for them, but someone who came off at the age of 17 and was basically a gang member, I think is my understanding of it, and somehow only has one write-up. That is pretty unheard of. Okay. So this goes back to the sentencing, November 13, 2012. Bridgeport, more than 70 people packed the Main Street Courthouse Tuesday morning as 5 young men were brought in to face murder charges in a gang-related killing of Harding High School student. Police cars ringed the block in the courthouse. The state police with dogs patrolled the halls. One by one, the defendants, 17-year-old, 16-year-old, 17-year-old, 20-year-old, and 18-year-old, were led before the Superior Court Judge Robert Devlin, all with their hands and feet in shackles. Across the courtroom, each was met with grim stares from the family of victims. Justin Nawalzi and some family members wore hooded sweatshirts bearing the photo of the victim, 19-year-old initials, and RIP. Devlin set down probable cause hearing days for each of the defendants. And each is charged with murder, conspiracy to commit murder. At that time, unless the defendant agrees to waive the hearing, the prosecutor would have to prevent evidence to show there's probable cause of continued murder prosecution. Following the brief hearings, family of the defendants were quickly escorted by judicial marshals from the courtroom to the hall, where they were greeted by half a dozen state police officers with a dog. They quickly left the courthouse without comment. On October 30th, the student at Harding High School was gunned down at the intersection of Howlett-Shelton Streets. Police said that he was walking along the street with some friends shortly after 5 p.m. when shots rang out from a passing red sports utility vehicle with tinted windows. As he lay dying on the street from a gunshot wound in the back, he was urged by detectives to name his killer. So he's laying on the ground. In his final words, he says, "It was a red Durango, a Dodge Durango. There were 2 guns." He gasped before passing out. He later died at Bridgeport Hospital. It's like a movie. There were 2 guns. It's interesting, huh? A short time later, police pulled over the SUV on Central Avenue. Inside, they pulled them over like immediately. They found the 5 young defendants. Police said they also found 2 handguns. And I thought it was telling. If you remember the very first hearing, that was quite some time ago, but Joseph said, "No, it was my guns. The gun, no." And when she challenged him on it, he said they were both under the front seat. And it's like, yeah, I mean, like he didn't insist I was the only shooter, but he said both the guns, as like the evidence, were under the front seat. And of course, I mean, you can't put a gun under the back seat. There's nowhere to put it. So he would have either slid it under in front of him, the guy in the back, right, his co-defendant, or, it's not proof that you had both of them. Police know that at least 2 of the young men in the SUV were shooting at the victim, but haven't identified them at the time. It is expected as the case progresses, each of the defendants will bring pointing fingers at the other in an effort to get more positive disposition. And what's interesting is that never happened. Either the police just wanted to make everything go quickly, or, they didn't want to do a trial. They let them, obviously they just wanted to get this under their belt, but it didn't seem like there were fingers pointing at each other. So we can talk about what they were talking about, how the scene at the courthouse was just crazy. Yeah, who would have thought Connecticut was anyways, so A violent rivalry between two city gangs exploded in Golden Street Hill courtroom Wednesday as more than 24 people clashed during the arraignment of 2 men for murder. People leaped from their seats as a score of judicial, marshal, city police officers, and state police rushed into the courtroom to separate the two battling factions. They are killers. They are killers in here, shrieked one woman as police whisked her away to an empty courtroom. One young woman who wouldn't give her name blamed the governor for the violence of shutting down the power on mischief night. I guess that was something they did. They shut down the electricity. I don't know. A word spread of the courtroom melee. Other people rushed to the courthouse only to be met on the steps by the police department heavily armed SWAT unit, which quickly diffused the situation. More people arrived and shut down the street as the groups were separated and escorted from the court. But even hours later, the two groups were trading taunts, and the police said they were concerned of new violence during the night. On Tuesday, 19-year-old Justin Nowalsey, a student at Harding High School, was gunned down at the intersection of Hallett and Shelton Street, apparently as a result of a message on Facebook. Can you imagine? Police said that he was walking along the street with some friends after 5 p.m. when shots rang out. As he lay dying on the street, a gunshot went to the back. He was urged by detectives to name his killer, and he said it was a red Durango. There were 2 guns, he gasped before passing out. A short time later, police pulled over the SUV. Okay. Minor's mother broke into loud sobs as her son, his hands, feet shackled, were led to Superior Court. As the judge began to recite the facts of the case, Minor blurted out, "You got the wrong person," which incited the capacity crowd in the back of the courtroom. A remark from the crowd during Robinson's arraignment set off the melee. Outside the courthouse, Minor's mother, who did not give her name, charged that her son was innocent of the crime. The real killers were sitting in the back of the courtroom making their gang signs, she said. Can you imagine? No wonder they had all that SWAT there. It's such a waste. It don't care if they call me a snitch. It don't care if they call me a snitch. This happens because of gangs, the east side against the west side. Victoria Padilla, who said she's a friend of the family and whose son was the victim of gang-related murder in the city, explained that Justin was a result of something he posted on Facebook. It happened because of what he said on Facebook. All these little kids talking trash on Facebook, and then they go out, get guns, and shoot each other. It's all about what he said on Facebook. It's all such a waste. There's one final article, and thank you again, Richard. But I think it's redundant. Yeah. So here's the bottom line. I did like the second hearing. So Mr. Williams, Jaquan Williams, I thought that he showed a genuine sense of empathy. And he had the great record and he had all of that stuff, and he seemed to, he'd do everything that he could possibly do to get paroled. But why, his full term date, it was a 20-year sentence. He was sentenced and incarcerated since 2012. I mean, he took a life. He was 17 years old when he took a life. He fired the gun. He's been locked up for 12 years of really a 40-year sentence with 20 suspended. It just doesn't seem like enough time. There's consequences to your actions. It's just a weird system. You almost might argue, they should have the system where maybe they can put him in work release. There could be different levels or progressions he can go. you hear from the victims and they're just shattered and they're victimized all over again. And it's hard to get over that part. It really is. Now, I don't, with all the impressions he got, you did feel like he's going to go out and do okay. That was my feeling. But I don't know, man. It seems like just not a lot of time for taking a life. And then I'm again super confused about the first hearing. Why in the world, would you go out and say you're the one that was holding both guns? I mean, one of them's lying, and you just wouldn't think the one lying would be the one that said. But I happen not to believe the first guy. Anyways, that's my thoughts. That's it. I'm glad. Thank you for being here for this long one. Let me know again if you want to see the full hearings. You can send an email to me. I'll give you that link for that. And with that, I'll let you go.